Welcome to visit Chill English Flow channel for learning English conversation. Jack and Soph here. Thank you.
Welcome to Chill English Flow. If you want to learn English in a relaxed and natural way, you're in the right place. My goal is to help you improve your English.
European leaders are joining a trip to Washington to make sure the transatlantic alliance remains intact. This time, when President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine arrives in the Oval Office, he will come with backup. An array of European prime ministers and presidents are flying in for the meeting on Monday to make sure that a viable, defensible Ukraine survives whatever carving up of its territory is about to happen at the negotiating table. But they are also there to make certain that the transatlantic alliance emerges intact. President Trump's instant reversal on the critical issue of obtaining a ceasefire before negotiating over land or security guarantees has left many of them shaken and wondering whether Mr. Trump had once again been swayed by President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia. By most accounts, the European officials want to ensure that Mr. Trump has not pivoted too close to the Russian side and does not try to strong-arm Mr. Zelensky into a deal that will ultimately sow the seeds of Ukraine's dissolution. And they want to safeguard against the risk of the United States, the linchpin of European security since NATO's creation in 1949, undermining that interest. In a call with Mr. Zelensky on Saturday, President Trump offered support for U.S. security assurance for Ukraine after the war, a shift from his stance that Europe should bear the burden of protecting the country, though the specifics were unclear. At a news conference on Sunday in Brussels, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Union's executive arm, stressed the importance of the security guarantees for Ukraine and respect for its territory. But she also said it was paramount to stop the killing and urged talks among the presidents of Russia, Ukraine, and the United States as soon as possible. One senior European diplomat, who spoke on the condition of anonymity out of fear of angering Mr. Trump, described his sense of panic among European allies. The diplomat had not seen a meeting like the one set for Monday come together so quickly since just before the Iraq War. The foremost concern, the diplomat said, was to avoid another scene like the one that took place in February when Zelensky met with Mr. Trump in front of television cameras at the White House. At that meeting, Trump berated the Ukrainian president, saying you don't have the cards in the war, essentially telling a weak foreign power to bend to the demands of a far more powerful one. The president did so again on Friday night, after Mr. Putin flew back to the Russian Far East, telling a Fox News interviewer that Ukraine was going to have to realize that Russia was a more powerful country, and that power meant Mr. Zelensky was going to have to make concessions. On Sunday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who sat in on the meetings with Mr. Putin at the American air base outside of Anchorage, disputed the idea that the Europeans were coming as a posse to protect Mr. Zelensky from a repeat of the February shouting match. They're not coming here to keep Zelensky from getting bullied, Mr. Rubio insisted on Margaret Brennan on CBS's Face on the Nation. They are coming here tomorrow because we've been working with the Europeans, he said, listing the many meetings the United States had engaged in before and after the Putin visit. We invited them to come. European officials said on Saturday that Mr. Trump told Mr. Zelensky he was free to bring guests to the meeting, and later the White House extended invitations to several European leaders. Whatever the motive for the leaders to upend their schedules on short notice, there is little question that elements of the negotiation will test the cohesiveness of the Atlantic Alliance. Putin's agenda is larger than just seizing part or all of Ukraine. For nearly a quarter century, his grandest ambition has been to split NATO, dividing the European allies from the United States. As Europe and Ukraine struggle to navigate Mr. Trump's sudden reversal of strategy for ending a war that has stretched well past 3 years, Putin has a renewed opportunity to realize his dream. The United States and its European allies now appear to be pursuing different negotiating strategies. The differences have long been brewing, but in the weeks before the Putin meeting, they broke out into the open. We're done with the funding of the Ukraine war business, Vice President J.D. Vance flatly said a week ago. The Europeans, however, have promised continued support through a grouping of countries operating outside of the NATO alliance. They got Mr. Trump to promise to supply weapons as long as the United States was paid for them from European coffers. The message was clear. Defending Ukraine was Europe's problem, not Washington's. The Trump administration is happy to serve as a for-profit arms supplier, but otherwise appears to see no responsibility to defend the country, which is not a NATO member. That was a wedge that Putin sought to exploit in Anchorage, and he did it skillfully. Mr. Trump has already adopted many of Mr. Putin's talking points, and few of the West's. Even before he met face-to-face with Mr. Putin, he assured the Russian leader that Ukraine's application to join the NATO would be put on long-term hold, a position that his predecessor, Joseph R. Biden Jr., also took. At various moments, he hinted that Ukraine invited invasion by applying to the alliance and to membership in the European Union. After the Friday summit with Mr. Putin, he went another step. Trump and European allies had agreed earlier in the week that a ceasefire must precede a peace accord, but he abandoned that view and sided with the Russian leader. With Trump abandoning the ceasefire but making no reference to the severe consequences he threatened, we are at a dangerous moment for the alliance, said James G. Stavridis, a retired Navy admiral who served as NATO's supreme allied commander from 2009 to 2013, when the United States still viewed Russia as a NATO partner, if a difficult one. This is exactly the kind of split European leaders were trying to avoid after Trump's return to power in January. NATO's new Secretary General, Mark Rutte, a former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, visited Washington frequently for quiet meetings with Mr. Trump. He was determined to avoid the kind of public breach that took place in the first term, when Trump came to the edge of withdrawing the United States from what he called an obsolete alliance. Rutte helped engineer the announcement in June, at a NATO summit, that nearly all members of the alliance had committed to spend 5% of the gross domestic product on defense. That gave Mr. Trump an early win and left the summit praising NATO's reforms. Trump took credit and left the summit praising NATO's reforms. Then European leaders designed the program to buy American weapons for Ukraine, recognizing its appeal to the president. The United States could remain Ukraine's arms supplier, but at no cost to American taxpayers. The strategy seemed to be paying off a few weeks ago when Trump castigated Mr. Putin for holding friendly conversations while continuing to kill civilians. He set deadlines and threatened to impose secondary sanctions on countries that were buying oil from Russia. For the first time since Trump's inauguration, Washington's approach, including the threat of new sanctions on Russian oil and gas if there was no ceasefire, and Europe's continued military and economic pressure, seemed roughly aligned. Last Wednesday, European leaders talked with Mr. Trump, and he agreed to hold firm with Mr. Putin that a ceasefire must precede a longer peace negotiation. That alignment is what blew up at Anchorage. It was determined by all that the best way to end the horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a peace agreement, Mr. Trump wrote on his social media site early Saturday. Mr. Trump's flip-flops stand in contrast to Mr. Putin's determination to stay the course with the war, as even the body count of Russians killed has soared. Peace will come when we achieve our goals, he proclaimed in late 2023. Even then, Mr. Putin was privately sending signals that he was open to discussing a ceasefire, but only if it froze existing battle lines, meaning Ukraine would have to cede control over roughly 20% of its territory. His overtures were rebuffed at the time, but now the Russian military is making considerable gains, so Mr. Putin no longer has interest in a ceasefire. They feel like they've got momentum in the battlefield, Mr. Rubio said, and frankly, don't seem to care very much about how many Russian soldiers die in this endeavor. It's a meat grinder, and they just have more meat to grind. That reality would seem to suggest that the timing hardly is right for a peace agreement. Putin may calculate his best strategy is to drag out the talks. But when European and American officials gather at the White House on Monday, they will have more to discuss than just boundaries. The Europeans have to find a way to bring Mr. Trump on board for concrete security guarantees for Ukraine, which could include a peacekeeping force that would deter Putin from restarting the war in a few years. In his conversation with European leaders after the Putin summit, Trump suggested for the first time that he might be willing to join that effort, though the assumption is that he would contribute U.S. intelligence, not troops. In London on Sunday, after a virtual meeting of European countries that call themselves a coalition of the willing, a phrase used in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, Prime Minister Keir Starmer of Britain's government issued a statement that commended Mr. Trump for his, quote, commitment to providing security guarantees for Ukraine. That phrasing seemed intended to lock him into the effort. The statement reiterated that the United Kingdom and other European nations were ready to deploy a reassurance force once hostilities had ceased and to help secure Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerate Ukraine's armed forces. The United States has never been that specific.